Japanese porcelain has been around for thousands of years, but most people recognize Japanese porcelain from basically the last 100 and some years, about 110, 120 years. Now, Japanese porcelain is a very fine, thin porcelain. Some people would maybe call it bone china, but it's not actually bone china. It doesn't have bone ash in it. Now, the oldest of the Japanese things that most people recognize as Japanese porcelain are these pieces. And these pieces have no mark on them whatsoever, and they're called pre-Nippon. Now, Nippon is the American word for Japan, and in 1890s, about 1890, 1892, America insisted that all goods being imported into the United States be marked. And so anything that is prior to 1892 from Japan will have no mark to. It is marked Nippon or made in Nippon. Nippon is actually a word that the Japanese used for themselves, but America insisted that they use it on their wares. And they used it basically from 1892 until 1920. In the teen years, about 1918, 1919, there was a law passed called the McKinley Tariff Act, and that is when America again changed the Japanese name from Nippon to Japan. So if you have a piece that is marked Japan, it's prior to, or it's after 1921. If it's prior to 1920, it will be marked Nippon. Now, this has no mark whatsoever. We can tell that it is Nippon by the type of painting on it. All hand painted. This kind of light yellowish glaze on here, the rose motif. This was all made for the Westerners. It was something that they would have basically catered to the Westerners' taste. This is something that the Japanese really didn't like. Now, on these unmarked Nippon pieces, you can sneak up on some really good buys. If they are animals on there, birds, if it is in matte finish, lots of gold on it, these are all things that are extra values to them. Now in 1921, we see that they start marking things hand-painted Nippon. Now if we look at this, a lot of people don't know what this is. Now I will tell you that there is a piece missing, and the piece that's missing is a ladle. This is a mayonnaise dish, and it should have an underplate, a bowl, and then a ladle that all matches. Mayonnaise was a very important thing to the early 1900s people here in America. You were known in your community for your mayonnaise, and so it was all interesting, different types of mayonnaise. Flavors like shrimp and orange and lemon mayonnaise were very common. About that time too, gelled salads came about. Now this is Nippon. If it had the ladle, it would probably be in the upper $75 to $85, maybe even a little bit more. This is a pattern that's very well liked because of the fact that it's poppy. There's a lot of European porcelains like Royal Bayreuth and and RS Prussia that also do the poppy motif. Now, although this looks like Nippon here, this is not Nippon. What it is, and it's a chocolate set, what it is, it says made in Japan. Now, made in Japan means that it's after 1921 to 1941, that 20-some year period. You will see things absolutely identical to this chocolate pot that will say made in Nippon. The reason is those pieces were made in December of 1920, and this piece could have been made in January 1st of 1921. So there are some sets of dishes that you'll find both marks on, and it's the same identical dishes. This is a pattern that probably was done by Noritake. Noritake did a lot of lake scenes. It's what I call Hollywood Japanese porcelain because of the fact that it looks like it's straight out of a cinema. And we have really nice earth colors to it. Any colors that are earth tones are more valuable than really garish things. The only way this would be better is if it had some gild on it. Chocolate sets are not for cocoa. What they're for a drink that is basically like a chocolate bar melted in warm milk. You find these cracked and broken a lot because if you didn't keep the chocolate stirred up, or what they call muddled up, it would settle to the bottom and harden, and then they'd have to take a knife and kind of chop it out of there, or they'd have to put really hot water in there and it would crack them. Always go over them with a fine-tooth comb. Look always at the lip on the front. Now, some people just collect the chocolate set, but when you find the chocolate cups, that's a big plus. Now, sometimes the cups are marked, sometimes they are not. Because the main piece is marked, sometimes the cups or the saucer. Any cups and saucers are good. If you have just two, that's fine. I like to have at least two. One says I've lost all my other friends here. So have at least two. Three, a lot of Japanese sets in Japan were done in sets of three. That's a normal set number in Japan. But for the American market, they did 4, 6, 8, or 12. Don't heavily buy right now made in Japan unless it's something very outstanding. This piece is very outstanding. It's priced very reasonable, even though it's marked made in Japan. Just a really nice little set. Now, here we have a pair of figurines. And when we look at the bottom on it, it says made in occupied Japan. Now, occupied Japan means that it was from basically about 1946 until 1953, during the occupation of occupied Japan. Now, I can tell that these are probably from the 50s, and if I had to venture a date, I'd say probably 51 or 52. The reason for that is it has really good paint on it. All of the paint, it's painted all the way around. All the paint is steadfast on it. There's no chipping of paint or anything like that. The really early occupied Japan pieces, such as a lot of the dime store salt and peppers and that sort of thing, because there are metals in the glazes, early on Japan was not allowed to use certain metals because they could be used in ammunition. So they tend to flake off because they're just paint. This is fired on glaze. Now, when you are buying occupied Japan figurines, a lot of them are colonial. And so a lot of people, for some reason, will get these mixed up with Staffordshire figurines. Staffordshire figurines are much heavier. They're made out of earthenware, and they don't have big holes in the bottom of them. Now, when you're looking at figurines, always check the fingers. Make sure all the fingers are there. Make sure they're not chipped. And if we look at this one, we find that the little pinky is chipped off on this, so that really hurts the value of this. Now, they're priced really reasonable, under $20 for the pair. The boy is in better condition. I have no chips on him that I can find. So he is worth the price just by himself. Now, in a shop, say in Chicago or LA, these, if perfect, would be over $150. Away from Kentucky, Occupy Japan brings a lot more than it does in Kentucky. Well, I hope this little talk helps you understand Japanese porcelains a little bit, and happy hunting out there.